Excise Tariff Amendment, Ethanol and Biodiesel Bill 2015.
I call the Honourable the Assistant Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I present the Excise Tariff Amendment, Ethanol and Biodiesel Bill 2015, the explanatory memorandum to this bill, and the Energy Grants and Other Legislation Amendment, Ethanol and Biodiesel Bill 2015.
Philip?
First reading, a bill for an act to amend the Excise Tariff Act 1921 and for related purposes.
I call the Honourable the Assistant Treasurer.
The Excise Tariff Amendment, Ethanol and Biodiesel Bill 2015 implements the government's 2014-15 budget measures to reform the taxation treatment of biodiesel and fuel ethanol. As part of the implementation of the Energy Grants and Other Legislation Amendment, Ethanol and Biodiesel Bill 2015 abolishes the Cleaner Fuels Grant Scheme. In last year's budget, the government announced changes to the taxation of biodiesel and fuel ethanol to better balance the need to support these important Australian industries while keeping the budget position on track. Currently, domestically produced biodiesel and fuel ethanol and imported biodiesel are subject to the same rate of excise as petrol and diesel. However, these fuel producers and importers are able to access a grant for the full amount of duty paid. The Cleaner Fuel Grant Scheme refunds excise and excise equivalent customs duty paid on both imported and domestically produced biodiesel. A similar scheme, the Ethanol Production Grants Scheme, which refunds excise paid on fuel ethanol to domestic producers, will cease on the 30th of June 2015. Instead of these grant schemes, the excise payable on domestic production of biodiesel and fuel ethanol will be reduced to zero and will then gradually increase to a reduced rate. The new excise rate for biodiesel will reach 50% of the full rate of excise that applies to petrol and diesel, and the new rate for fuel ethanol will reach approximately 33% of that rate. Imported biodiesel and fuel ethanol will be subject to the fuel duty rate. The government is mindful of the important role that domestic ethanol and biodiesel producers play in the economy and the importance of encouraging diversity in Australia's fuel mix. Biodiesel and fuel ethanol producers contribute to the Australian economy through their fuel production processes, and having a range of alternative fuels has a positive effect on Australia's energy security. The government's role in facilitating the success of Australian industries has to be balanced against the government's debt and the cost to the future prosperity of Australians of fiscal policies that do not maintain a sustainable trajectory back to surplus. For this reason, the government has decided to move domestically produced fuel ethanol and biodiesel into the excise system and apply excise with reference to energy content. This approach is consistent with the government's approach to other alternative fuels and will ensure that fuels are taxed fairly and transparently. The approach in these bills recognises both that biodiesel is a close substitute for conventional diesel and that fuel ethanol has lower energy content than petrol or diesel. The treatment in respect of domestically produced biodiesel and fuel ethanol is consistent with Australia's long-standing government policy to tax alternative fuels at half the energy equivalent rate. This policy recognises not only the potential benefits of these alternative fuels, but also the desirability of tax neutrality across alternative fuels. This puts in the hands of Australians the choice of fuel rather than it being dictated by its tax treatment. The government is committed to working constructively with the opposition and other members and senators to pass these reforms through the parliament. The government is setting Australia on a realistic return to surplus. We will make the decisions that are needed to repair the budget and maintain the integrity of the tax system. These decisions form the basis of an economy that will be well placed to ensure the future prosperity of Australia and Australians. The government's progress back to surplus has made significant progress. As part of the commitment to repair the budget, the government is prepared to make the right decisions to ensure the return to surplus occurs as soon as possible. The 2015-16 budget maintains a steady and credible trajectory towards surplus despite a $52 billion write-down in tax receipts and the iron ore price almost halving since the 2014-15 budget. The savings provided by these measures are part of the government's broader plan to return Australia to surplus. Full details of the measures are contained in the explanatory memorandum. I now move that this bill be now read a second time.
The debate must now be adjourned. I call the honourable member for Blaxland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the debate be now adjourned.
The question is that the resumption of the debate be made in order of the day for the next sitting. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Clerk?
Government business, notice number 4, energy grants and other legislation amendment, ethanol and biodiesel bill 2015.
I call the Honourable the Assistant Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I present the energy grants and other legislation amendment, ethanol and biodiesel bill 2015.
Clerk?
First reading, a bill for an act to amend the law relating to energy grants, customs and excise and for other purposes.
I call the Honourable the Assistant Treasurer.
The energy grants and other legislation amendment, ethanol and biodiesel bill 2015 is one of a number of bills in this package that implements measures to change the taxation treatment of fuel ethanol and biodiesel. The measures remove existing grant schemes and instead provide that the domestic production of biodiesel and fuel ethanol will be subject to a reduced but gradually increasing rate of excise. Full details of the measure are contained in the explanatory memorandum, and I now move that this bill be read a second time.
The debate must now be adjourned. I call the honourable member for Blaxland.
And I move that this debate be now adjourned.
The question is that the resumption of the debate be made in order of the day for the next sitting. All those in favour, please say aye. The question no. I think the ayes have it.